As the crisp air of autumn begins to settle in, there's no better way to honour the season than by baking a delicious pound cake, using in-season oranges to give us the energy we need as we traverse into the cold winter months. This cake is perfect for celebrating the harvest and the turning of the seasons, and you can imbue your baking with intention and magic, making this cake not just a delicious treat for the taste buds, but also a ritual to welcome autumnal energies. I've attempted to make this recipe as simple and as cheap as possible for you, so that there's little barrier to entry in order to fashion yourself a warming, delicious and magical treat. To begin our quest, you will need to gather your ingredients: 300 grams of plain flour, 180 grams of any kind of sugar, but castor is best, 120 milliliters of oil, I just used vegetable, 200 milliliters of any kind of milk. I used oat milk for mine as it's nice and creamy. A few oranges, icing sugar, and baking powder and vanilla essence if you have it. You will also need 2 mixing bowls, a mixing spoon, a deep baking tin, and a sieve if you have one. It's entirely up to you how you'd like to decorate your cake, whether you want to just use some icing sugar, some grated peel, or some crystallized orange slices, like I have. If you'd like to make your own crystallized orange slices, you should probably make these before you make the cake mix so that they have time to cool and dry. I used 3 oranges for mine, and it's best if you cut them as thinly as possible, but as you can see, mine are quite thick and were still delicious. In a wok or frying pan, add around 200 grams of sugar and 200 milliliters of boiling water. Stir on a medium heat so the water remains at a low boil until the sugar completely dissolves. You only need to simmer the slices for around 10 minutes, but the longer you leave them in, the sweeter and softer they will be. When they are done simmering, leave them on a wire rack if you have one, on top of a plate or some kitchen roll to catch any drips and allow them to cool and dry. Right then, let's get on with the cake recipe. In the first mixing bowl, we are going to add all of the dry ingredients together and mix them up nicely, so the flour, sugar and baking powder. Use a sieve if you have one to get all the lumps out of the flour. In the second bowl, we are going to add all of the wet ingredients. We need about 100 milliliters of orange juice, and I got this by squeezing 2 oranges into a jug and then pouring into the bowl. You can just use a carton of orange juice if you find this part a little difficult. Then add the milk, oil and vanilla essence to the bowl, giving everything a nice little stir. Now we're going to add our wet bowl into our dry bowl and mix everything together until we have a relatively smooth cake batter consistency. Next comes the fun part, grating our orange. Use a whole orange and just grate the peel on the outside using a cheese grater. Try not to get any of the white pith, as this can be quite bitter, and use as much or as little as you'd like. Then stir into the cake batter mix until it is relatively evenly distributed. As you are doing so, you might want to envision that you are creating a spell as you are stirring the ingredients inside your cauldron. Stir the ingredients with your spoon clockwise to symbolize the turning of the wheel of the year as we move from summer to autumn to the cold and harsh wastes of winter. Smell the orange in your mixture, representing the sun, energy, and vitality. This is also a chance to add any other spices and herbs to your spell if you so wish, such as a little sprinkling of cinnamon for prosperity and abundance, or ginger for passion and courage. Now, it's time to pour your mixture into your baking dish. You may want to line this with parchment or a little margarine, as I later found out the hard way that the cake may stick to the bottom otherwise. Give your container a little tap to remove any bubbles, and then stick in your oven at 180 degrees for around 45 minutes. Remember not to open the door during this time, as we want the cake to rise nicely. After the 45 minutes, do the knife test by stabbing a blunt knife in the middle of the cake. If the knife is completely clean when you pull it out, then the cake is ready. If not, try baking for a further 10 minutes or so. Take the cake out of the baking dish and leave on a plate to cool, either on the side or in the fridge. Once your cake is cool enough, you may want to add some garnish such as some icing sugar or the crystallized oranges mentioned earlier. I made an icing glaze for mine by adding in a drop of water each time to some icing sugar until I reached the desired consistency. I poured this over the cake in a very messy fashion and then added my crystallized oranges on top to create a beautiful little garnish.
It's so dense and rich. I can really taste the orange. Can you hear that?